tell you that it is possible to take this country back. It can be done. It can be done because of this magnificent movement called the Tea Party movement.
Yes.
And people often ask me, Michelle, what is the Tea Party? My mother told me, you need to go on TV and you need to tell people what the Tea Party movement is, because I'm not even sure I know it. And so I explained to her and she said, oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. And this is what it is. If you disagree with the Obama, Pelosi, Reid agenda, you're a Tea Party. It is not that complicated. And America's figured it out. They don't like what those guys have to sell. Yay, we win. That's awesome. Because America took one good look at Barack Obama, and they took one good look at Speaker Pelosi. And they were so fearful that because of all of you last November, we were able to pull that gavel out of her and pry it out of her. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
She was a little reluctant there to let that thing go. We were not reluctant to pull it out of her hands. Because we showed up and you showed up and did exactly what had to be done. You made the phone calls. You walked the precincts. You handed out the leaflets. You sat there and found not only the best possible candidates, you raised the money, you wrote the checks, you did everything that has to be done to elect a good candidate. And we took the House of Representatives back. In fact, I love this. The mainstream media called it a shellacking. A shellacking. They think that was a shellacking? Get ready for 2012. Because we have an opportunity in 2012 to take it all and win the Triple Crown in 2012. In 2012, what we need to do, if you're upset with anyone, if you're worried about what the Republicans are doing, and again, we are proud Republicans, happy to be Republicans, but again, we are working within the system. We are bringing the Tea Party values to Washington, D.C., which are your values. And people ask me, Michelle, not just what is the Tea Party, but what does the Tea Party stand for? And I think it's boiled down to essentially three things. It's more than that for some people, but I think there's a 70% commonality of agreement. Because let's face it, not everybody's going to agree on medical marijuana. Okay? Not everybody is going to agree. Not everybody is going to agree necessarily on the life issue. I know that Trent is rock solid. As am I. And we are grateful to be able to advocate for that cause. But where we see the intersecting lines for about 70% of the people part of the Tea Party movement are these three ideals, and that's this. Number one, we are taxed enough already. That's not the answer. And as a federal tax litigation attorney, I will tell you, we are taxed enough already. No new taxes, no more taxes, cut taxes. In fact, here's my answer for the tax code: abolish it. Even the IRS, we called them about 2 weeks ago, they could not tell us the exact number of words in the tax code. It's approximately 3.8 million words. Happy reading! I hope you're enjoying it while you're filling out your tax code. There are great options to change the tax system. It could be the fair tax. It could be the flat tax. All I know is this: whatever system we come up with will be far better than the system that we have now. And the other driver you must never, ever, ever, ever forget is this: it is spending that drives the tax code. And so we have to dramatically ramp back where we are now. You cannot spend 1.65 trillion more in a year than you have, and that's exactly the Titanic that Captain Russ told us we're doing. Bigger hole, more water. That's what 1.65 trillion means. But that's on top of 1.3 trillion last year. And it was worse than that last year. Why? because that didn't include the hundreds of billions of dollars that went out the door to pump up Fannie and Freddie. This Frankenstein nightmare that continues to drain your money in Washington, D.C. So the picture was actually worse than $1.3 trillion. The year before that, the first year when Barack Obama came in, remember what he famously said? I inherited this mess from George Bush. Remember that? Let me tell you the mess that George Bush left him. In 2007, the last year that Republicans had control of the budget, in the last year, Republicans had debt in 1 year of $161 billion. For the year, $161 billion. In the month of February this year, for the shortest month of the year, Barack Obama had a deficit of over $223 billion. George Bush, that big spending George Bush, and I think he was a big spender too. But his number for deficit in 2007 was $161 billion, and Obama is $223 billion in the shortest month of the year. Shortest month of the year, whatever I said, you clean it up. That's why I love Arizona, you're so intelligent. But what is amazing today is the big spending numbers of George Bush are dwarfed by the new universe that we are living in Washington, D.C. There is no moral comparability with what's happening now in Washington. That's going to change. That's going to change. Taxed enough already is this: governments cannot spend more than what they take in. And we saw that. We have your legislature here to thank, because they said it. Sure, it may seem hard. Sure, we might get a lot of ink written against us. But we are going to stand up and take it like the men and women and adults that we are in the room. And we're going to do what has to be done, because we're not going to stick it to the taxpayers of Arizona. We want this state to grow, not collapse. So thank you for what you did. We are not going to spend more money than what we're taking in. And that's a lesson for Washington, D.C. Principle that I see that defines the Tea Party movement after taxed enough already and spending no more than what we take in is this: we that are tasked with the privilege of serving in government, whether it's in the courts, whether it's the executive, or whether it's in the legislature, we must, it isn't even an option, it isn't even our choice, it is our duty and our sacred oath to act within the limits of the Constitution. Yeah! Begins, we the people. And we the people didn't make this an optional document or a living document so that whenever the Supreme Court goes into a session, it's essentially another constitutional convention. That is not what the founders intended. In fact, Thomas Jefferson said he wanted to bind down the legislature and the executive with the chains of the Constitution. Because that's what the thrill was about America. The United Kingdom was all about tyranny. They've been there, done that with tyranny. Now what they were after was maximum liberty. And the only way to do that was to keep the maximum amount of liberty for the individual and the minimum amount of power for a central government. Message of the Tea Party movement is so frightening to the left right now that you are public enemy number one for a reason. You threaten their very cushy perch that they have enjoyed for about 50 years. give them a farewell ticket out of town. I think what we need to do is have the First Lady start beginning to fill out the change of address form for 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We're done with that nanny state. We're done with that nanny state. We are Americans. We are not an infantile nation. We're an adult nation. And we know how to stand on our own, and that's what we're going to do. This is our charge now that we have. This is our opportunity. Because going forward to win that Triple Crown in 2012, holding on the House with rock-solid conservatives, taking the United States Senate, we need a historic push, and we've got an opportunity like we have never had before. We have 23 seats open on the United States Senate side. We need 12 more seats to run the number up to 60. Why is 60 important? That makes the Senate filibuster-proof, and we can get legislation through. I don't always trust necessarily all the Republicans, even over in the Senate. And so I would like to run that number up a little bit over 60. And do you know that Republicans have never had 60, to my understanding, in the Senate? But this is what I know. The United States started as a miracle. Yes, it is. The founders even knew it would take a miracle. George Washington wrote about it. John Adams wrote about it. Various founders wrote about the miracles that took place to start this nation. Because it just didn't happen by accident. They were not expected to win. George Washington lost battle after battle after battle after battle. There was no money. That's why they had bloody footprints at Valley Forge. They literally, George Washington wrote, were naked. They were naked and had to wrap themselves in a threadbare blanket if they can get that. They had no shoes. We have no idea the price that was paid to purchase this liberty. As much as I love and adore you, none of us will ever know what that cost was. In fact, Abigail Adams wrote of that. She said the next generations and subsequent generations will never know the sacrifice and the treasure that was expended to secure this liberty. And that's why they knew they needed to do everything they could to tie down the force of big government. And so the place that we find us right now in the United States under these policies is a course that will lead us not into the future, but in the very distant future, very near future, into a startling decline. Mike Frank wrote an essay from the Heritage Foundation, and he said this. Mike Frank wrote about the decline of nations. He said, people often think that it's hundreds of years that it takes a society to collapse and decline. And he said, if you look at the great civilizations over time, it was less than a decade when nations became too involved in too many wars. And they allowed too many people to come from other nations and invade their nations and change their cultures. And they began a cycle of spending. Spending spree that no amount of taxation could ever repair. That is the cycle of nations in decline. And the reason why we aren't here today crying crocodile tears and curling up in a fetal position and sucking our thumb is because we as Tea Partiers, we who are reasonable, fair-minded Democrats, do you know that the Tea Party is filled with reasonable, fair-minded Democrats? It is. It is filled with independents who are reasonable, fair-minded independents. It is filled with reasonable, fair-minded libertarians. It is filled with reasonable, fair-minded people who've never been political a day in their life. Reasonable, fair-minded conservatives. Yay, yay, yay. We are the largest umbrella movement in modern political history. And we have enough force, we have enough energy, we have enough verve and viability to be able to win it all in 2012. And I say, if we pull together, not eat our own, continue to build up those who are in the Republican Party and let those know in a one-on-one personal basis where you are looking into the whites of their eyes saying, hey boy, get it together or I'm coming after you. I'm telling you. If we hang tough, we can actually turn this country around and win it all. And then we can see the solutions. Just a couple. Energy. Did you know that in the United States, a report just came out from the Congressional Research Service? If you look at every country in the world, no country has more energy than the United States of America. Yep. You wouldn't know that by listening to Katie Couric, would you? We are the #1 nation in the world. Well, I say go get them. Make it legal. Let's get our energy resources. When it comes to job creation, I think we can do a little better than a $1 trillion waste-a-thon. What do you think? It is so simple. Just cut all the programs that don't work. Maybe 90%. Just cut out the programs that aren't working, and I'm not kidding, nobody is going to miss them except the people who are collecting the paychecks that are administering them. Well, there's going to be a lot more jobs in the private sector. Go there! And let me just close by saying this, because it is a three-legged stool that will allow us to be victorious. My opinion is this. Social conservatism is fiscal conservatism. And I think we need in 2012 to respect the traditional moral values that this nation was founded upon. We need to respect those views. I think also the fiscal views and the job creation views, again, will be those that we talk about. But the third leg of this stool that Trent Franks has been so magnificent on in the Capitol in Washington is this. National defense.
Yes.
And the very first year that Barack Obama was in office, I believe that this is accurate, Trent, that in the budget there was only one item that the president wanted to cut, and it was missile defense. That was the one and only item that he felt that we could do without. Let me just say one word on Libya. Regarding Libya, I've come out and I oppose the current effort that we have in Libya, and I want to tell you why. Secretary of Defense Bob Gates said last Sunday on one of the early Sunday morning shows that Gaddafi did not pose a threat to the United States of America. He also said there are no vital national interests that America has in Libya. Okay, those are the two prerequisites for going into a nation. Those two aren't met. Here's the third, and the one that I think is probably even more important. We have no idea who the opposition force is. Here you have the United States involved in Libya. And there's a story that came out last Friday in the UK Telegraph that said that there are veterans of Al-Qaeda in North Africa involved in the rebel army. Well, let's just be conservative, because we are, and say that maybe not everyone is from Al-Qaeda and the rebel forces. Maybe they aren't. Maybe they aren't all Hezbollah. But let me ask you this, terrorist organizations. But let me ask you this. How long do you think, if the rebels win, how long do you think it will be before the Muslim Brotherhood, Hezbollah, and Al-Qaeda of North Africa, how long will it take them to take over the leadership of Libya? Now, this is why this is important. Libya has something called a funding stream, and it's called oil. And guess who gets all that money now? Gaddafi. He gets that money. Well, imagine if Al-Qaeda in North Africa has not only their own country, but they have a sustainable source of billions of dollars of revenue in order to fund their next adventure, which may be a global caliphate. Just consider what the outcome of a failed experiment like this could be. Barack Obama has not only reduced and diminished America's standing in the world, I believe that he has put our peace and security at risk. He must go. The way he will go is if this broad coalition of Americans, reasonable, fair-minded Democrats, independents, Republicans, libertarians, conservative, apolitical people, if we hang together for 2012, we are unified. We have a vision for taking the House, taking the Senate, taking the White House. We will prevail, but we need to do this. We need to be unified. We need to stand together. We need to thank leaders like Trent Franks and J.D. Hayworth and all of your reps that are here. Tom Morrissey, who's trying to lead this party. All of us, we've all got a role to play, don't we? Yes. We all do. There is not one person that's more important than the other. I'm not more important than Trent Franks. Trent Franks is not more important than Tom Morrissey. Tom one bit more important than the Tea Party Patriots. Tea Party Patriots are one bit more important than someone who came here today who has $5 in your pocket. There is not one of us that is more important, because every single one of us is a cog in the machine called bringing our country back and also standing on the foundation of liberty. Yeah. We all stand on that as much as the world thought that 2008 was a change election, I'm just here to tell you, they ain't seen nothing yet.